Hello YouTube, this is Allan Jeremy bringing you yet another Blender tutorial. So in this tutorial I'll be introducing you to the navigation of the Blender 3D view. I'm going to be teaching you how to navigate through this interface and how to use the basic modeling techniques. Okay, so these are the buttons that I am pressing, and I will try and do everything manually throughout this tutorial, because this tutorial is basically just meant for beginners who have never used Blender or who need an introduction to the navigation within Blender. Okay, so first of all, to navigate and turn around within this 3D view, you press the middle mouse button down and drag the mouse over to whichever direction you want, and you can see everything all around. To select objects, you use the right mouse button. For example, this is a lamp. I can select using the right mouse button, and I can select the camera as well using the right mouse button. So basically that's how you do it. And to pan around the current view, you press Shift and the middle mouse button, then drag over the mouse. And panning basically is just moving from side to side within one view. So you hold the Shift button on your keyboard and the middle mouse button, then move the mouse side to side. Okay, so the next thing you need to know is the axis. So the y-axis, which is represented by this green arrow, the green arrow represents the y-axis, and to move an object on the y-axis, you can drag on that arrow and you can see that the object only moves on the y-axis. Then the red arrow represents the x-axis, and you can move an object on the x-axis by holding the left mouse button down. Sorry for the confusion. You can also move an object upwards by holding the left mouse button down and dragging on the z-axis after pressing on this blue arrow. So when you move an object and release the left mouse button, the position where the cube is currently becomes its new position. But if you want to cancel the transformation, you right click and the cube snaps back to where it was. So yeah, that's basically it. So down here we have the option of the translate manipulator, the rotate manipulator, and the scale manipulator. So in Blender and any other 3D software, basically things are done through translation and scaling and rotation. So everything is done through those three types of transformation. And translation is moving the object, rotation is turning the object, and you can see I'm turning the object on the x-axis. And if I rotate on the x-axis, then it means that the x-axis is the pivot of the rotation. For example, the center of this rotation is the x-axis, and therefore we rotate along the x-axis as a pivot. You can also rotate along the y-axis and also the z-axis. And one thing you should know is that objects rotate based on their origin. The origin is the center orange dot thing here, and everything is done according to the location and position of the origin. So if you have not as yet watched my tutorial on introduction to the interface, you should watch it so that you may get a little bit familiar with the interface. And So I'll go to the object settings and I want to return everything back to 0 so that the object is where it was when you were starting. So I will change everything back to 0 and that's it. Okay, so we have looked at the 3 types of transformations that are used in 3D, and now I guess it's time to go into modeling something. Okay, so now we're going to model something, and to model anything we need to go into edit mode, which you can do by clicking on this button thing here, then select edit mode, or you can press tab to toggle between object mode, which is the default mode, and edit mode. So these are shortcuts, and if you master the shortcuts, then it's going to be easier and faster for you to do anything. Okay, so let's take a look at our cube in edit mode. Right now you can see here, this is the selection type, and as you can see, this is the vertex select mode, and therefore you can only select individual vertices. And to select several vertices, you press shift and right click while you select each and every single one of them. So if I select this 4, I have selected a face. So we're going to change this manipulator back to the translate manipulator. And to delete an object, you can either press X and it will bring a bunch of options, or you can press delete and you can choose delete faces. For example, in this case we want to delete the face, and you can just delete that face. And so we already have an open box, and now let's transform this and change it into something that looks more appealing. Okay, so we're going to model a simple house for this exercise, and remember that every single translation occurs based on the origin. And one thing you should know is that when you move objects in edit mode, they do not move with the origin, and therefore the origin remains where it was originally, even though you move the vertices around. So we're going to scale this object while in object mode so that the origin remains constant. So we're going to scale this on the y-axis, and you can scale by using this manipulator here, or you can press S on your keyboard, then move sideways. And to constrain the scaling on a certain axis, you can press S, then the letter representing the axis. For example, I want to constrain it on the y-axis. You can press S, then Y, and that will constrain it on the y-axis, which is the same as using this y-axis scale manipulator. So we're going to scale it on the y-axis, and you can type in the number of times you want to scale it on your keyboard after you constrained it, and I want to scale it by 2. So that's twice the length on the y-axis than it was originally. Then we also want to scale this on the x-axis, and we're going to scale that by 1.5. So now you see we are getting a good shape, and now we need to add objects. For example, our roof. So to do that, you can go here, add mesh, then add a plane. You can change the view to side view by clicking here, or you can press number 3 on your keyboard. So now we can change this to perspective so I can get a better view, and we can move here and scale this plane on the y-axis until it fits like so. Then we're going to rotate this using the y-axis as the pivot point, and we are going to rotate it by 45 degrees. Is that too much? Then we're going to change this to the translate manipulator. We're going to go to the object settings, and I think 45 is too much, so we're going to change it to 30, and that looks okay. Then we can toggle to front view by pressing numbered 1, as you can see here. Then we can position this like so. Then we can duplicate this by clicking on this, or by using the shortcut, which is Shift D. So you can press Shift D, then move this over and change this rotation to -30, and that just means that it will be rotated in the opposite direction, so -30, and you can see that's rotated perfectly in the opposite direction. So now we need to drag this here and delete one of this. I think we had an extra one, and so that's it. So now you can see our house is beginning to take shape. So the next thing we want to do is add this sides. So we can do that by adding a plane, and sorry if I am using some unfamiliar shortcuts. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, the object that you add is always added at the point where the cursor is, and the cursor is this red, white and black thing here. And so when we add an object, plane, you can see that it's added at the position of the cursor. So the origin is the basis of an object. Basically, the origin is the basis of an object transformation, and therefore the origin is the part that appears at the point of the cursor. So we can move this here and rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Then you can go to front view and press Z to go into wireframe. Then we can scale this on the x-axis until it fits somewhere around there. Then now we can go into edit mode, and we can click these two vertices, and when you scale them down, you can see that it somehow almost forms a triangle, but we want to merge the two. So what we are going to do is press Alt M, sorry for the unfamiliar shortcuts, and merge at center. Then we can drag this down to somewhere around here, and we can also drag this upwards to somewhere around here. Then we can scale this on the x-axis until it fits like so, and we can move it. And now that we have the basic shape, we can change the view to side view somewhere around here. Then we can go to top view by pressing numpad 7. Sorry if I'm going too quickly once again, and drag this over up to around there. Alternatively, you can change the view from here, but I find it easier to use shortcuts, so you can change to top, which has the same effect as pressing numpad 7. Okay, so now our house is looking quite good, I would say, but I will say that we should drag this down a bit and scale it on the x-axis. Then we do the same to this one, S, and scale it on the x-axis and drag it down a bit. So now it's looking quite good. Okay, so now we need to add to combine all of this into one object, and we can do that by selecting everything, then pressing Ctrl J, and this will basically just add it into one object, so that when you move it, it moves as one object. So now our house is basically quite good, and it's lacking windows and a door, so we're going to add this. I'll press Ctrl numpad 1 to go into back view, and now from back view I am going to add a loop cut. So you can go here and add loop cut and slide, or you can press Ctrl R on your keyboard, and this will allow you to add a loop cut. And this is basically just cutting across the entire mesh, or rather the loops. Then you can add 2 loop cuts horizontally and another 2 vertically, and the vertical loop cuts are going to allow you to define where the window is. And now we're going to take this face and we are going to extrude it. So we're going to extrude the region and we're going to extrude it slightly. And I think that's quite okay. Then we are going to move the cursor to it, Shift S. Then now we're going to add a cube. And yes, you can add objects in edit mode, but if you add an object in edit mode, then it is part of the mesh within which you have toggled into edit mode with. I hope that makes sense. For example, this cube is going to be part of this base of the house, and to select the cube you select one face, then press L, and it's going to select all the linked faces and vertices, and we're going to scale it down and go into back view. Then we're going to scale it on the x-axis until it's around, and by the way, G is for grab, or you can just use this. Then we're going to scale it on the z-axis. And around there. Then we can press Shift D to duplicate it, and we're going to rotate it on the y-axis, which is not visible, but this is how it's going to rotate. We're going to rotate it by 90 degrees so that we have a cross-like thing for our window. Then we're going to drag this over, and we are going to scale this by on the y-axis until it's around, or until it looks quite sufficient. S, Y. So now you can see it clearly. So we need to add material. So materials basically just give the color, and well, materials are materials. I don't quite know how to explain that. So L to select our linked faces. Then we're going to add a new material by pressing this plus button, new. Then this is going to be window pane. I'm going to rename this just so I can remember, and I'm going to scroll down and give that material assign, hit assign to assign the material to the selected faces. Then you can also select the linked faces for this and assign. Linked, and select the window pane and hit assign. So now if you go into object mode, you can see that our window is almost complete, but you can't really quite see it as well. So now let's just add a new material, and this is going to be called glass, and we're not going to add any transparency or anything, but we're going to change this to blue, and we're going to assign it to this face. Okay, so now we can see that our house has the window. So creating a door is basically the same thing. Control R and just create the door. So now I'm going to teach you how to use the mirror modifier, which is going to make things much easier for us, because it's going to mirror exactly on this, and it will probably help you in later modeling exercises. For example, modeling the human face, you wouldn't want to model the entire face all together, and because it will take a lot of time. So you will just want to model one side, and the other side is automatically generated based on whatever you modeled on one side. So now we're going to add a loop cut at the center. Then I'm going to right click to cancel the transformation, and we're going to go into side view and press Z to go into wireframe mode, or you can change from solid here to wireframe. Solid is the initial one. You can change it to wireframe, and after that you can change this to vertex select mode, and you can select all these vertices using the box select method, which brings up this tool which you can drag over and select all the vertices. So you use B, then drag over with the left mouse button selected and select the vertices that you want. Then we'll press X to delete, and we're going to delete the vertices this time. So now we have half the original house. We're going to go to this range, add modifier, then add a mirror modifier, and now we can't see anything because it is mirrored on the x-axis. And now if we move this, we can see that it's mirroring. Okay, that's a word. So we need to change this to y, because this is mirroring, sorry for the bad English, this is mirroring the object on the y axis. So we need to change this from x, so uncheck x and check y. Then we need to enable clipping, and this just allows you not to be able to separate the parts. For example, this center, I'm going to press Alt and right click to select this loop, and sorry for the unfamiliar shortcuts. Now when you drag over, you can't separate them. When you uncheck clipping, when you drag over, you can see each and every, you can see them separating. And if you go back to solid mode by pressing Z, you can see them separating. But when you turn on clipping, they don't separate. Okay, so now you can see that our window has been mirrored on this other side. And now we're going to create the door, which is basically going to come here. We're going to add a loop cut, and we're going to add another loop cut somewhere around here. And we're going to select all these vertices, or you can just go to face select mode and shift right click and select those two. So now we're going to extrude this by either going here or pressing E and extrude slightly inwards. Then I'm going to scale this on the Y axis. No. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to scale that slightly on the Y axis, so move it on the Y axis. And voila, now you can see we have our door. So we can change this material to a new material called door. Oh, and the material called material is basically just our entire meshes, or meshes, I don't even know what I'm saying, our entire mesh material. So we're just going to leave it as is. So you can just call this door, and we're going to change this to somehow dark brown-ish. Then we're going to assign this to that face, and now you can see that we have our door and our two windows. So now we can also combine these two objects, but we want a different material for the roof. So we're going to add a material. And one thing you should note is that you can add different materials in either object mode or edit mode. But when you are in edit mode, you can assign the different materials to the different faces, while you're in object mode, while when you're in object mode, you can only assign the material to the entire mesh and not the individual faces. So basically what edit mode is, it allows you to manipulate all the polygons or faces or vertices or edges of your mesh. And so if we need to assign materials to different polygons, then we are going to use edit mode. So I'm going to call this roof, and I'm going to change this to somehow red-ish, red orangish. And I'm going to turn down this specular, and this is just the amount of I think light bouncing off of something. I don't know how to explain it quite well, but anyway, you can see that when the specular is low here, this reflectiveness is less, and when the specular is high, the reflectiveness is high. So I'm going to just reduce this slightly, and now we can select our camera, and first of all we can change the view from our user orthographic view to the camera view, and now we can join these objects by selecting them both and pressing Ctrl J, and you can rotate by pressing R and constrain it on the Z axis. Then we can rotate it slightly and try to render this. So now we can see that our house looks kind of strange, and that is because I believe we have some overlapping objects, and we're going to press Ctrl Z to undo whatever we have done. And now we will press A to deselect everything, and A once again to select everything. We're going to press W, and we're going to go to remove doubles, or you can just scroll down. We'll find it here, remove doubles, remove 0 vertices, so I guess that's not a problem. Anyway, we can now render this, and as you can see, it looks quite good. So you see, so that's basically our first model, and in this tutorial you have basically just learned a few techniques, for example extruding using the mirror modifier, and also rendering an image, which you do, by the way, by pressing F12 or going to this camera here and pressing render, which is going to render the image. And the reason mine has these lines is because it's under the freestyle render engine, and you can just select it by checking this box, and it's integrated into version 2.67. so if you're using an older version and you don't see it, then fear not, and if you uncheck it, then we can render it without the lines, and that's how it looks. But I prefer using freestyle for this particular case because it's a simple model, and freestyle just makes it look good. So that's basically it. This is our first model ever, and once you have rendered the image, then you can press F3 to save it, and I'm going to choose my Blender stuff, then render, then images, and I'm going to change this to maybe first render, my first render. So save as image, and now if you do go to your system, then you will see the image. So basically that's the first model we've ever done, if you have never modeled before, and those are a few techniques. So recap quickly is we have object mode and edit mode. Edit mode is where we can edit the polygons, and object mode is where we do anything that affects the entire mesh, and you can change between solid view and wireframe, and also textured, which shows how the light affects objects, and we can also go to wireframe, which shows us the wireframe of the object, sorry. And one little thing you also need to know is, let's say, sorry for this, unknown shortcuts. With time you'll just get used to the shortcuts, so sorry, please bear with me. So let's just end this tutorial here because I am getting confused and I was not really quite prepared. But anyway, now we can open this up by clicking on this plus button, or we can press N to close it down or open it up. You can also close this down by sliding your mouse over here, or you can press T to close it down and T to open it back up. So here I explained this over in my other tutorial on introduction to the interface. I explained it quite a bit, I think. So now the next thing we're going to do is learn how to add background images and how to use them to model. So please subscribe, comment and like, and I am going to try as much as possible to explain everything in detail. And also I have nothing to say. So I guess that's it for today, and goodbye and thank you for watching. Cheers.